Hello hobby friends, I'm Jason and this is Level Up Hobbies. Now today on the channel I'm going to be finishing off the Lionel Johnson series, and this is the final video where I cover all of the details that I didn't cover in the previous videos. So let's jump in, let's go ahead and start painting, and I'll see you at the end. Later.
So here's where we left off. We have the armor complete, well, at least the base color of the armor complete, and the cloaks. They are complete. Now I'm going to move on and start working on some of the detail work. I'm not going to have a devoted video to each individual detail. I'm just going to knock out details as we go, and I might miss some. I might not cover each and every little detail because how you're going to do those is up to you. But any of the major ones I'm going to cover in this video here. Okay, to start off, we're going to start with the gold details. And for this, I'm actually using Pro Acryl's bronze. I'm using bronze because I think it plays a lot better with the dark green color of the armor. Now I take and I give all of the bronze details a wash of Sigvald Burgundy, and I thin this down to some contrast medium just because I don't want it to totally kill all that bronze color. I just want it to kind of flow down into the recesses. And I'll go through and just kind of pick up any excess that's on the surface. Once that's dry, I go back in with the bronze and I just start building up those details, leaving that burgundy in the recesses. Now as a highlight, I go in using light bronze from Pro Acryl and just build up those edges even more. Make sure you leave that darker bronze and then that burgundy down in those recesses. I'm wanting to go for a cool white for all of these details, so I start by basing all of my white details in Celestra Gray from Citadel. Now this is a very light gray, it can almost pass for a white, but it's got decent coverage. It took about 2 coats that I've thinned out to cover this really well. Once that's done, it's followed by a layer of Griff Charger Gray, Citadel contrast paint. I follow that up with a layer of Ulthuan Gray, and I'm going to make sure that I leave that Griff Charger color like down in the recesses. I like that Griff Charger with this. It gives it a nice cool shadow to play with. So just build up this color. I do this slowly, just in thin coats, and try to get the nice sharp edges along those details there. Now I finish off the white detailing with some sharp edge highlights using, this was Pro Acryl white. You can use something like a ceramite white or just plain bright white. Moving on to the red details, I block in all of these using Pro Acryl's burnt red. I like this as a nice base color for my reds, and then I work up from there. Then all of those details are painted with Citadel's Contrast Flesh Terrors Red. Now I finish that off with a layer highlight of Wazdaka Red. Now I use Pro Acryl's Mahogany to base coat all of the leather bits. This is a very similar color to Rhinox Hide, except it's a little bit more got on the red side. Um, I don't know. I like it as just a nice base color. It gives a nice warm brown. Now to highlight that leather, I take some Cadian flesh tone, mix that in with the mahogany, and just hit those edge highlights. And we're going to do a final highlight by adding more Cadian flesh tone to that mixture. So it's about a 3-to-1 mixture of Cadian flesh tone to mahogany. And now for the lion skin, I based this in a warm gray from Pro Acryl, and then I painted the entire thing Basilicanum gray contrast paint from Citadel. I wanted this kind of as a wash just to give it a nice foundation to work up from. Now, once that's dry, you want to go back in with that warm gray and build back up that base color, but only kind of focus on giving it just that the texture of like hairs. And we're going to keep brightening up the color here with bright warm gray. And the same thing, you're just going to go through and just build up that hair texture by gradually layering just little hash marks over hash marks over hash marks. And luckily this piece of the model, it has texture built into it that you can use as kind of a guide, but all of it doesn't have that texture, so you just kind of have to build your own. And for the final color of the pelt here, I chose to use Ulthuan Gray. I went with this because it's very close to white, but it's a very nice off-white, and since like in most furs you don't see like a natural bright white, I went with this off color here. So I thought it played very well with the overall scheme of it. And here's a quick view of the model thus far, minus his shoulder pauldrons and shield. But you can see what the model looks like with this white gray cloak as opposed to the tan one on the box art. Moving on to the head. To start, I prime this piece white, and then I give all of the skin a base coat of Pro Acryl's Shadow Flesh. I make sure and thin this out and just give it a couple thin coats just to build it up and build that color up gradually. Okay, once I'm done with that, I gave all of the skin a coat of Pro Acryl's Flesh Wash. I don't have that video, I don't know what happened to it. And then once that's all dry, I go back in with that Shadow Flesh and build up those raised areas. I want to make sure I use that flesh wash shadows in the recesses, leave those, and I thin this shadow flesh out and just lightly build it up. I don't want very much on my brush, otherwise it can run out and clog up those details and just flow into those shadows and just totally kill all of the detail work that you achieved from that wash. Next, we're going to make a 50-50 mix of the Shadow Flesh and Cadian Flesh Tone. Instead of Shadow Flesh, you could use like Bugman's Glow. But a 1-to-1 mix of that and just thin it out, kind of clean it off my brush a little bit, and I just lightly build up that next transition layer. Again, you want to leave that previous color in the recesses and just build up. This is going to be higher up on those edges. Next we transition to just straight Cadian Flesh Tone. Again, thin it out, and I just kind of lightly build up the colors using kind of a stippling method.
I think you get a little bit more control on these small areas, uh, for me at least, doing that, and just build that color up very gradually. Now we do another 50-50 mix. This time it's Cadian Flesh Tone and Kislev Flesh. Again, thin this out and just lightly build up those highlights. I take some Magos Purple contrast paint and I thin it way down, where it's almost clear. And then I go in and I just paint this in, glaze it in actually into the recesses, like under the eyes, under in the cheeks, just to really build up that cool shadow. And I just work this glaze in, as working in as much as you want, just till you're happy with that color. Moving on to paint his hair, I start off with a base color of yellow ochre. This is from Pro Acryl. That's then followed with a very thin coat of Agros Dunes contrast paint. I thin this out, make sure it's got enough color in it to flow into those recesses and give me some definition in the beard, uh, and well, just all over the texture here. As you can see, as you're painting it, it's very washed out, and then once you give it this wash, or contrast paint here, it really brings out the definition of those details. Now I go back in with the yellow ochre and pick out individual strands of hairs. I don't go overboard. I don't try to highlight every single strand like on his head and beard. But I pick some out, and then I go in and I make a mix of yellow ochre and bright warm gray, and I do the same thing. I just start highlighting some of those individual hairs. And I went with the gray because he has aged and everything. So just to give him an older feel. You don't have to. You can use anything. Use like a warm light yellow or something like that if you want. Okay, let's move on to his blade, fealty. So there's a number of directions you can go when painting a blade here. You can go just paint it metallic like a silver and then give it a wash and highlight and you're done. You can go with a true metallic metal where you darken and lighten the base color metallic to create the idea of shadows, or you can go with a non-metallic metal to just create the idea of a metal texture and shadows, which I went with that just to play around, see what I could come up with here. So I start off with just basing the entire blade with black. I used a matte black from Pro Acryl. You can use any black you want for this. I chose to go with a matte and then build up my blacks from that. So I started with a black blade, and then I started to build the shadows with dark jade from Pro Acryl. Now I chose jade because I was trying to simulate or just take some inspiration from the box art where there's a kind of a jade sheen to the blade, and I really like that. But I wanted to go with that non-metallic paint scheme as well. So I was using jade as the dominant color in the shadows and then working up my highlights from that. Now when you're working this way, what I do is I thin it out and I make glazes and just very thinly build up those colors. And when working with a glaze, you want to work in the direction that you want the color to be the darkest. So you're going to drag and just pull that color across the surface, ending where your, like the jade here, would be most dominant. And the next color is jade. Again, I thin this out into a glaze and just very um, strategically place this and drag it in. So this area is going to be much smaller than the previous one, and you're going to get these transitions to where you're going from darker to lighter. If you mess up and you think you got too much light in here, then just go back over with your previous color or black, you can start over, and just glaze that out and just fix that transition and move up from there. So I lost the video with the next transition, which was Bright Jade from Pro Acryl. Again, made a glaze and just pulled that towards the highlight that I wanted. Going back in, just playing back and forth with those previous colors. It was really just an ongoing transition that I was working on. The next highlight is the Bright Jade and then White. So it's about a 50-50 mix, and I'm really starting to work on those bright highlights with this part. Again, my area that I'm painting is getting smaller and smaller with each layer, and I'm just building that color up gradually. If you need to, you can go back in with black or that dark jade and reduce the size of that highlight area if you need to, and then just work your colors back up. And now at this point, I'm just going back and forth again, just doing corrections, taking my different glazes and working them in. I'll do like an all over glaze to give it like, you know, kind of unify some of those colors, and then I'll work the shadows back up like you see here with the blacks, and then yes, kind of grab and drag that out of the highlight, you know, into the darker areas, and you'll get these more stark transitions between shadow and highlight, and that's what you want with metallics. You'll have a highlight, and then you'll have an immediate transition to a shadow, and then that'll drag out to another highlight. So it's a lot of going back and forth and back and forth. It's For me at least, it's not a fast process. Some people it might be. I'm just still playing around with these non-metallic metal like looks. So, but yeah, so it's just back and forth and back and forth. Now I start building up the final highlight of white, and to me this is probably the hardest one because glazing white can be difficult. It tends to leave watermarks if you're not super careful, and so then there's more of that back and forth just to kind of you get that white in there, let it dry, and then use one of your darker colors and glaze that out to remove that watermark that or tide mark that the white left. I'm sure it's just my inexperience at working with it that is the problem, but it's just something to watch out for whenever you're painting non-metallic metal like this. And I continue here just working up that bright white highlight here. Once I'm happy with those transitions, I'll go through and do a fine, hard edge highlight with the bright white over all of the edges of the sword. And then I'll take and using the white and bright jade mix, I'll do kind of just slashes and like scratches on the blade. And then I'll go back in with the bright white again and just do final edge highlights on those scratches and nicks like on the blade. Also adding any type of like shine or reflection area that I might want. Just a final super high edge highlight. And now for the watchers. So for these, I wanted to go with a black cloaks for them. So I based them with Pro Acryl Black, which gives me a nice matte finish for it. And then I just did consecutive layers of Vallejo Somber Gray, and then followed that up with Steel Gray, also from Vallejo Game Color. And for the final highlight, I used Ghost Gray. It's a nice, cool, uh, cool highlights for the black, and I like how they turned out. I used them also, this combination also with my Lion's Guard that I converted. You can see that video up above. I'll put a link. And you can just see the overall paint scheme on those. And all the color recipes on the base are the same as I used on Lionel Johnson himself. The bronze statue and then also the white tiles. Same color recipes that I used for the lion. So for the basing material, I used a combination of Geek Gaming Scenics, Arid Earth, and City Rubble, I believe it's called. And I mixed that up, probably about 50-50. And then I also added a couple pinches of static grass just to add a little bit more variety to that mixture. And I really like how that came out. I applied this using some PVA glue and just sprinkled it over there. The glue, when that was dried, then I added some watered down PVA to just lock it all in place. Now once that glue's all dry, I give the base a victory lap of black paint and give it all a spray of matte primer, and this model is complete. Yeah, I am very happy with how this model turned out. In my opinion, I think this is one of the best, if not the best, model that I've painted within my collection. I'm very happy. A couple details that I would probably do differently if I painted this guy again would be the cloak. The green of the cloak is just too close to the green of the armor. And I don't know how I would change that. Either do like a brighter green, like in the box art, or change the color altogether. Do like a cream or a black cloak. I think either of those would look really good too. But other than that, the model itself turned out wonderful. I'm extremely happy with it. And how the power sword turned out, that non-metallic metal. Leave me some comments. Tell me what you guys think of this. If there's anything you would do differently, I don't know, just anything. But this is the last video in the Lionel Johnson series that I've made. So hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Hey guys, thanks for joining me today as I finished painting Lionel Johnson, Primarch of the Dark Angels. If you enjoyed the video, please give me a like down below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell icon so you can receive notifications whenever I make new videos. Thanks again, and remember, build, paint, and play tabletop games. Later, guys.